At the Western Front, the heavens hadn't ceased weeping since sometime in October, and the trenches that etched the landscape were in a perpetual state of flooding, with the men slogging to their positions through sucking knee-deep mud in areas, losing familiarity with the solid nature of the earth and the rest. The front-line soldiers had grown accustomed to wearing caked mud over their entire person, and having it encroach upon everything that they did, but it was hardly the most offensive part of their current circumstances. And there was nothing to be done about it anyway, so the men simply got on with it. After months of rain, the winter had crept in with its biting cold, making the trenches even more inhospitable, all the while being bombarded with constant shelling and the jarring sounds of machine gun fire. The bone-deep cold and the sticky mud were unable to be shaken off for any real length of time, and were second only in causing discomfort in this war of attrition to the stench of the battle that permeated everything. Many of these men had presumed that they would be safely back home by now, sharing in the Christmas celebrations with their families. When the Archduke and heir apparent to the Austro-Hungary throne, Franz Ferdinand, along with his wife the Duchess of Hohenberg, had fallen beneath an assassin's bullet in Sarajevo, throwing Europe into a state of war, the freshly conscripted troops couldn't imagine peace not being restored in a matter of months. But here they were on the morning of December 24th of 1914, feet deep in the mud on the Western Front, still engaged in the fighting. And despite the pleadings of the newly installed Pope Benedict XV in calling for a truce on Christmas Day, that the guns may fall silent at least upon the night the angels sing, the proposition, which was readily accepted by the German High Command, was roundly rejected by the other nations, and thus the war continued on. The only change at all was in the weather on this day. The incessant rain had stopped over the past 48 hours, and now a crisp frost had moved in, giving way to a light powdering of snow by midday. The world that had been drowning in violence and mud the day before now appeared like a Christmas card, with its sparkling coat of white covering the countryside. Beside the deceptive beauty of their surroundings, if one was able to look past the barbed wire and bodies strewn through the no-man's land between enemy trenches that ran no more than 150 yards from each other, the only indication that it was the season for peace on earth were the packages from home that had arrived on the front lines filled with goodies. Sweet treats such as cakes, puddings, cookies, and candy were included, as well as practical things such as warm socks, gloves, cigarettes, and pipe tobacco, which lifted the spirits of the otherwise disheartened men. The officers distributed embossed tins filled with cigarettes, pipe tobacco, and tinder, along with a picture of King George V, inscribed with his best wishes for the Christmas of 1914, and a hope that each man would return unharmed to their families soon. The gift tins, commissioned by Princess Mary, also contained a Christmas card and a picture of the royal family. In the German trenches, the men received cigars in a cigar case, a gift from Wilhelm II, and a souvenir pipe bearing the likeness of the Crown Prince, Wilhelm, from the prince himself, as well as packages from home and more than 1,000 Christmas trees delivered from the homeland. The Germans had no intention of letting war get in the way of Christmas. Troops on both sides of the nasty affair had decorated the inside of their muddy trenches with candles, Christmas cards, and holly and mistletoe scavenged from the surrounding forests. Now, as dusk gave way to darkness scattered by moonlight, which reached down with wispy fingers to paint an ethereal sparkle across the fresh snow, a strange silence fell across the front line. The peculiar stillness was interrupted by a sniper's fire occasionally, and even that faded to nothing as the evening wore on. A glow filled the trenches as the men lit their candles on the trees and in paper lanterns. One artillery officer noted that,
"About 6, things were positively dead. There wasn't a sound."
A young German lieutenant observed.
"All was quiet. No shooting. A little snow."
And then an extraordinary thing happened. A clear German voice pierced the silence with the first strains of the angelic Stille Nacht. The singer's compatriots joined him until the song filled the night air and poured into the British trenches. And remarkably, the British troops joined the song, blending their voices with the Germans, embracing the familiar and dearly loved carol in English. In another portion of the front line, Private Oswald Tilley wrote home that,
They finished their carol, and we thought we ought to retaliate in some way, so we sang the first Noel. And when we finished that, they began clapping, and then they struck up another favorite of theirs, O Tannenbaum. And so it went on. First the Germans would sing one of their carols, and then we would sing one of ours, until we started up, O Come All Ye Faithful. The Germans immediately joined in singing the same hymn to the Latin words, Adus Fidelis. And I thought, well, this was really a most extraordinary thing. Two nations, both singing the same carol in the middle of a war. This experience has been the most practical demonstration I have ever seen of peace on earth and goodwill towards men. It doesn't seem right to be killing each other at Christmas time.
German voices could be heard to shout, "A Merry Christmas to you, Englishmen." Robert de Wilde, a captain in the Belgian artillery, recalled,
The soldiers were singing. It was unreal, sublime. They were singing, Angels we have heard on high, O holy night, and O come all ye faithful. All the songs we used to sing when we were little. Christmases of long ago were coming to life again. All the things we had known in our childhood. The family, the countryside, the fireside, our eyes dazzled by the tree with its sparkling candles.
At midnight, some of the British troops began firing rockets in celebration, with the German troops exclaiming over the beautiful display of fireworks. The men on both sides set up temporary places of worship in barns, village halls, abandoned shelled-out churches, and in the open, with altars lit by candles at which they could offer their prayers on Christmas. As the morning dawned on Christmas Day, the fields and forests were obscured by a thick fog, while hard frost, a gift from Mother Nature, miraculously made the muddy earth solid again. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous on many levels. The carols that had filled the air on Christmas Eve, and the prayers offered at makeshift altars, had shifted something, and both sides claimed the other side first ventured out from the protective covering into the between no man's land. Whatever the truth, at some point the commanders, realizing what was happening would not be stopped, issued orders to not shoot unless absolutely necessary, and sent peace delegations to the other side to announce their intent to bury their dead, stranded in the lonely space between the trenches. Together, men who had been enemies 24 hours before buried those who had fallen in battle, holding brief services at the gravesides. Corporal John Ferguson recalled the strangeness of the day.
We shook hands, wished each other a Merry Christmas, and were soon conversing as if we had known each other for years. We were in front of their wire entanglements and surrounded by Germans. Fritz and I in the center talking, and Fritz occasionally translating to his friends what I was saying. What a sight! Little groups of Germans and British extending almost the length of our front.
The men chatted with one another like old friends, showing off their family photos and exchanging gifts and rations, as well as badges and buttons that would be kept for souvenirs. A roasted pig was shared, and the Germans in one area of the front line rolled several barrels of beer over to the British trenches to exchange for plum pudding. And then the men slowly returned to their respective trenches, where a sort of intermission occurred as they ate their Christmas dinner. The festivities continued with new friends vowing not to return to fighting for several days, one British man getting his hair cut by his German barber he had frequented before the war, and even impromptu games of football being played after British troops procured a ball from their trench. As night again fell like a curtain dropping on the most unusual Christmas Day, the men trudged back to the trenches. A German soldier summed up the entire event succinctly.
Today we have peace. Tomorrow you fight for your country, and I fight for mine. Good luck.
Another German soldier wrote,
The way we spent Christmas in the trenches sounds almost like a fairy tale.
But not everyone was touched by the felicitous feelings. One corporal of the 16th Bavarian scolded his fellows concerning the truth.
Such a thing should not happen in wartime. Have you no German sense of honor left?
Then again, most of us wouldn't expect anything less of the 25-year-old Adolf Hitler, whose heart seems to have been impervious to the Christmas spirit. Despite the promises of the enlisted men among themselves to repeat the truce the following Christmas, it never happened again, as the German High Command issued orders against fraternization with the enemy shortly after this occurrence. The other nations, for their part, threatened court-martials, but thankfully, none seemed to have come to fruition. The generals and field marshals for the British troops noted that it took them until February of 1915 to get the men back into order, as killing your enemy is far less appealing after you've shared a Christmas together. The remarkable events of that Christmas of 1914 is the stuff of legend to those of us hearing the retelling over 100 years later, but to the men who lived it, it was nothing short of God reaching down to touch the hearts of men, reminding them of their common humanity through the captivating strains of familiar Christmas carols. We hope you enjoyed today's video, and that if you have, you'll take a moment to hit like, comment, and even share with your own friends and family, as it all helps us continue to grow. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you later.